In this video, dive into the movie Spartacus. We will discuss the storyline, summarize the plot, and explore the cast and character. Additionally, we will cover the movie's production details and box office performance. Finally, we will provide reviews and share personal reaction. So, let's get started. Presumably, the title Spartacus Plot and Sand was chosen for Star's latest dramatic foray because 300 Blood and Sand, or Gladiator Sand and Blood, would not clearly come. In any event, there is can resemblance between this dreadful blend of those recent movies and the program's ostensible nomsky, as the show tries to adopt the hundreds visual style and despite spilling buckets of gore. Proves woefully pale by the comparison, indeed. When the smoke cleared for this blood splattered battle, the servitor will likely stand and sheepishly played I am not Spectres, please don't confuse me with Spartacus. Just to put this episode in the context, the original 1960 classic remains a personal favorite, and I am extremely fond of the other aforementioned effort. So this hardly represents an inversion to swords and sandal. There is, however, considerable irritation over such a brazen, at times laughable attempt to piggyback on their success. The Thracian warrior does a strong wild man eventually kissed and spat join with the Romans to fight off a common enemy, but winds up being thrown into the gladiatorial arena when he refuses to obey their command. Separated from his woman Erin, he essentially gave his line to endure all manner of torment in order to survive. On the outside chance the two might be reunited, which includes the battered Damomis Johan and his silly trainer, Dr. Pater, whose 300 cameo provides a promotionally advantaged link. What ensues allows in the gladiator's life as filtered through the crazy lens of the Calvin Scallon ad. Sure, there is some graphic sex and a modest court intrigue among the holy Roman, but nothing to do approach the worst moment in the HBO's Rome. Lucky Lawless, the wife of series producer Robert Shepard, loyalty chips in the as lustful spouse, who has an insatiable hunger for gladiator, unlike the rest of the cast scenery. Written by the small while alone, lines of the dialogue at times appear to uncomfortably echo this earlier movie, which is less irksome than it would be otherwise, because the less familiar exchange, my boot will fan your ass in our afterlife, are frequently risible. Unlike the sex, no one could call the violence gratuitous since it's the sole reason the show exists, and accused to artfully suppress slow motion pattern of entrail and severed limbs across the screen. To be fair, the program does improve marginally after the premiere, but by then the bar set to solo, a three-legged horse could clear it. And while one can hardly expect a budget on the scale of the Avatar, the styles washed out the background and crowd sequences. That's why Starz has relied on the episode title. Not this is to ease the marketing button is launching original drama. But if the pay channel wants to become a serious presence under just install CEO Chris Albrecht's futures endeavor will need to exhibit a few brain to argument the brawn. Until then, Spectres ends a big, very bloody tombstone. Starz has announced that the sequel series will debut with its first two episodes on December 5. New episodes will be available to stream weekly on Fridays, thereafter only on the Starz app and all Starz streaming on demand platform. In addition, Starz has released a series of new first look images for the series, which can be seen below. What if Ashur had lived and the Romans rewarded his secrecy with the gladiator school where he once bled? Welcome to the House of the Ensure. No longer a slave, Ashur has scored his way to power, owning the same endures that once owned him, but ruling a band of the missiles. Gladiator is child's play compared to surviving the vicious world of Roman politics. Along with Tarabe and Davis, the cast of series includes the Graham MC Davis as Corius, Jodie Weber as Targon, Jamaica as Hilara, Ivana, Mashiach, India, Sean Smith as Vidya, Jackson the Gladiator as Geezer, Jamie Slater as Cornelia, and Lee Gill as the Stylist. Spartacus creator, writer, and the executive producer Steven S. Dick Knight serves as the showrunner and executive producer on House of Ashore. Rick Jacobson and Aaron Helbing also serve as the executive producer. Spark's House of Ashore is produced by the Landscape Television. Sparks originally debuted on Starz in 2010 with the first season officially titled Spartacus Blood and Sand. It was followed by the prequel series Spartacus Gods of the Arena in 2011 and the subsequent season Spartacus Vengeance in 2012 and Spartacus War of Demand in 2013. Starz has set December 5 as a two-episode premiere of Spartacus House of Ashore. The industry-bending gladiator drama will drop individual new episodes on Friday via the network's app and linear channel. New photos can be found below. In the next chapter of the Spartacus universe from Steven S. Dick Knight, the question is posed. What if Ashore had lived and the Romans rewarded his territory with the gladiator school where he once played? Welcome to the House of Ashore, no longer a slave. Ashore has clawed his way to the power, owning the same leaders that once owned him. But ruling a brand of the Merciless gladiator is child's play, a game in which betrayal is not a sin, it is the currency. He flips tradition on its head by unleashing Danica Davis, a fierce and powerful gladiator eager to prove herself worthy in man's world. Together they ignite a new kind of spectacle that shock, disrupt and often the allied with every drop of blood. The cast also includes Cici Graham and MC Davis, Jodie Webb, Jamaica, and Claudia Black is for anyone wanting to rewatch the original series. They are all available to stream via Starz. Spark's Blood and Sand debuted in 2010 and was followed by this prequel series chapter Spark's Gods of the Arena in 2011 and two additional chapters Spark's Vigilance in 2012 and Spark's War of Demand in 2013. The upcoming third season of Star's flagship series Spark's will be its last. The pay cable network also has set a title for the upcoming final season, Spark's War of the Demand. It will premiere in January 2013. It was an extremely difficult and emotional decision for any partner, and I, series creator, producer Stevens as the night said. Yet in the end, the story was best served by rolling all of the remaining action and drama of Spark's journey into one stunningly epic season that will be extremely satisfying for everyone who's been along for the ride. Spartacus was a breakout hit for Starz when it first cycled. Blood and Sand premiered in January 2010. The series survived the tragic loss of its star, Andy Whitfield, who died of cancer last year. Its second season sparked as winningness featuring Liam McLean in a title role, averaged more than 6 million weekly viewers. The series introduced to TV a visually stylized violence previously only seen in movies like 300. Spawned a successful prequel, Gods of the Arena, and was sold in 150 countries. It also has been a top-selling DVD title. Spartacus is a landmark series for the network which has enthralled millions of viewers and fans around the world. Star CEO Chris Albrecht said, "We are in agreement with our patrons in a decision to conclude this story after War of the Demand, as we believe it is the best way to maintain the integrity of the series and secure its legacy." Making the decision that season 3 will be lost ahead of time is important as Spartacus is a historic figure and his life on his show has to follow a documented path to predetermined conclusion. War for the Demand, now in production in New Zealand, takes place following the defeat of Roman commander Gaius. Spartacus and his men have amassed major victories against the Roman after the Battle of increasingly rank of the rebellion slab to more than 3,000 this year. New such forces will include the construction of a full city, a Roman villa, and the scene of the epic battle along the Appian Way, War of the Damned Stars returning cast member Manu, Bennett, Dustin, as well as new addition Todd as guest Simon Merrill as Marcus and Anna. So that my non-Spartacus watching readers can see a little of why I became hooked on the show. I have written this first season review with no spoiler except in bullets. The bullet points are intended to give people who have seen the show an idea of my favorite moment and like for season. The Olympics are made for a barren TV landscape in February, so I found myself digging through on demand for something else to check out in the meantime. I think partly influenced by my recent obsession with the God of War video games, I ended up giving the Starz series Spartacus Ultra. While it clashes a bit with my sensible taste at time, I found myself hooked on the show and very glad I gave it a try. Spark's Blood and Sand follows the journey of a Thracian man when a deal struck for him and his Thracian veteran to aid the Roman army turns sour. He and his wife are taken as slaves and spotted with him sent off to the arena. Despite facing what looked it like certain death, he manages to survive and his life as a gladiator and a titular Spartacus began. While this tale might be familiar to some due to the 1960 film or just the history it was based on, I went in knowing only the broad stroke of the story, so the series retained a lot of the suspense of a purely fictional TV show, as I was unaware of many of the character fates, and of course there was always be different directions the show creator could veer off from history itself. Adding an extra fun layer to whole thing was going back and reading up on the real Spartacus and seeing what was based on actual history, which is something I will comment more specifically on as I talk about certain event from the show. The biggest selling point early is undoubtedly the action. The fight scenes are gloriously, particularly the one on the one battle that occur in the arena. Great choreography and the stunning bouts of violence left my mouth gap while the styles look added a certain flair to the proceeding. Sometimes the way hairs fly after being lopped off looks a little silly, but it is a minor blemish on what or otherwise. Some top-notch fight sequences which are worth the price of the admission alone. Even just seeing the different fighting style as the series goes on from sword and shield to trident and net is fascinating in its own right. The show as a whole takes a little bit to get going. The first few episodes are really rough around the edges, but by about halfway through the first season, things really start to come together in most all aspects. I was particularly impressed with the pacing. Things that were happening halfway through the season could have easily been final material. Looking back, knowing the history, it does make a bit more sense. The sort of phase each of the three man seasons represents a really work, but they still could have easily decided to draw out any of these arc to multiple seasons. So I appreciated the momentum they created in the show plotting. One thing that helped look me into the show as it continued was the duplications plans that were being hatched, especially by the non-gladiator character in the show Ralzalios, our training school that the gladiators call home, and he is quite the shimmer. He is played by John Hannah and is one of those memorable villains that you have to hate. His wife, Elorceta, and another character do some crazy things as well. It not only helped to build a group or root against, but make them seem like capable antagonists that will physically inferior to Spartacus have the brain to give him a different kind of rival than the ones he meets in battle on the sand of the arena. Another interesting aspect of the show is the dialogue. It has a prose like quality to it that make me feel like no ever could have talked like this. Little reading told me it was maybe supposed to be how Latin might sound in modern day English. What makes it more interesting is how they worked some hilariously into this piece. So along with the flowery talk of sunset, you will hear the term Jupiter cock about 300 times throughout the series and learn that it's a part of Spectre's term. With that being said, this is a clearly show for adult. The language and the violence are enough to make it so, but there's plenty of nudity and sexual content too. I personally found myself to rolling my eyes because of it at times. The show could not resist its just cutting to short a woman in the arena of races, pulling their breast out or having a couple of people engaging in the various forms of intercourse in a background of others. Spark's blood and sand start out a little rough. By the end of the first season, I was absolutely hooked on this drama. It proved to be more than just blood and breast. The show provides ample amount of both, but it surprises with clever writing and characters you will grow to love for more than their figure and fighting power. I am so happy I gave this. I mentioned earlier about the fast pacing. I was surprised to see that Spark's wife killed halfway through the season and equally surprised to see Batiatus bite it that season and same with the how fast Spartacus became champion. In hindsight, it makes more sense. But still, the show may have dragged those cut out, especially when crafting such a great villain in the Batiatus. I was specifically thinking out your plan when I commented about this earlier in this article. One being how Batiatus, the death of the magistrate, and the other being brought in the various dead. And of course, Ashur plays a huge part in the former and he turns into a quite a villain himself. This is tough one, but I will go with the Spartacus and the Whitfield and such an excellent job with his character, and I liked how this passion for his wife lent a softer side to his personality and a great driving force for his action throughout the blood and sand. So many good better in the first season, but I will go with these factors and Grace's fight against. Watching the two rivals work together at least to try and best the hooking beast is pretty awesome and helps show us some of the fantastic choreography and is such an intimidating presence as well. Makes it even better when he finally gets taken down. There were a few moments I could just not believe they even showed on TV. The one that for better or worse stand out in my head is when one gladiator gets his member removed and his shorty. Some spouting blood from his body, one of the many brutal moments from the show. The final kill Jamal is one of those truly memorable hour of television. It might be the series' best episodes. Season give it a run for its money. Watching Spectres lead his rebellion against those who held him and his brother captive was unforgettable. When Krieger stabs his shield, finally signifying he will help and Spartacus find himself offer to the attempt and assassination of Batiatus on the balcony. Wow, just so cool. I will continue my look at this series over the next couple of weeks with three more blogs, one of each of the other season. These will be a little shorter and for those who have already watched. Just merely taking about its setup kind of spoil earlier parts of this show. So this is kind of the end of the road for non-watcher. I would love to hear any other Sparkles fan thought on blood and sand in the comment. What were your favorite moment and characters? Presumably the title Sparkles Blood and Sand was chosen for Star's latest dramatic fury because 300 blood and sand or the gladiator sand and blood were not clear legal. Created by Steven S. Knight, who worked on shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel Dollhouse, Smallville, and most recently Marvel's Dreadwell series. Spartacus is set in 73 BC and based on the historical legend of a major slave uprising against the Roman Empire. Spartacus, played by the Andy Whitfield, a Thracian warrior, who after deserting his Roman aesthetic unit, a slave army of non-Romans who are forced to fight for them. is condemned to death in the gladiator arena. However, after surviving and proving himself a worthy gladiator, he is bought and forced into slavery under the House Batiatus, a gladiatorial training camp run by the Quintus Batius, played by the Johann, along with his wife, played by the Lucky, having been separated from his wife. Spartacus agrees to fight in the arena on the promise that we will be reunited with her. Spartacus is like a mix of Romeo, 300 and the Gladiator, and its over embellished and unelastic combat sequences, excessively graphic sequel, and black and white story. Telling her part of his storm, I would love it. Spartacus consists 3 seasons and a miniseries, Blood and Sand, begins War of a Champ, and a miniseries God of Arena, which is a prequel set before the event of the first season. In the first 4 or 5 episodes, they use this really over the top blood splattering effect. It looks silly, it's like a bucket of red paint being thrown at screen, and they went absolutely crazy with it every chance they got. Splash for splash, but as I said, this was only in first few episodes. The blood effects afterward are still extremely exaggerated, but the tone it down significantly and it works. In a Quentin, seeing scene skill builds sort of way. As far as the historical accuracy, from what I have read online, the general consensus is that the show is actually pretty accurate. Give or take or few element, all of this supposedly happened. It just obviously did not happen in the manner depicted, but it happened. It was surprised it was in my way historically accurate. I did not know anything about his practice outside the fact that he was a famous gladiator, but after watching the show, I am familiar with the legend now. He was like Jesus on steroids. The writing is excellent, the story flows well, and everything makes sense. It's easy to follow and very engaging. It also looks great. The characters are believable, and the environment feels real. They don't quite capture the level of authenticity they achieved in the HBO's Pro. It feels a lot more scaled down, but it still worked very well. Spartacus has an array of important characters that you will become emotionally invested in. We care about these people and believe in their cause. We understand them and we are rooting for them. The main characters, at least, Spartacus has a great cast. Everyone embodied their character perfectly and delivered very believable performances. Spartacus played by the Andy Whitfield and later Liam M. Silton due to Whitfield passing away after the first season. Both delivered excellent performances, and yes, to all the morning fans still were there. Andy Whitfield was better. There was a very real sadness to his performances, an emotional depth MC Taylor just could not match, and it was a shame to not get to see the series through to the end. But Blood and Sad was by far the best season of the series, not only because of the Whitefield superior portrayal of the Spartans, but because of a moral, well-rounded story. It was on a smaller scale than the following season, but the sentiment was more powerful. Not that the other season were not good. They were great. Blood and Sand was just excellent. Also, Andy Whitefield's performance was superior. Liam MC still did a great job too. I think everyone's too harsh on him because of Whitefield dying, but give the guy a break. What do you want from people? Whitefield dead. People should be thankful the series even carried on at all. And we did get gods out the arena as a result of his death. You have got to look at the positive. The whole cast was great, but the two best performances, is my opinion, are from Johan, Hannah as Quintus, and Lucky Lawless as Lee. When these two are on screen, it's great television. They were nasty, they were destructive, and they were cruel. I absolutely loved them both. Their relationship both to each other and just live in one of the best aspects of the show. Other notable characters come in the form of the ominous doctor, played by Patcher. He is the gladiator trainer, harsh with his method and loyal to his dominus Quintus. He is man of his high principle and set wrong moral, respected by the slave and to a degree by the masters too. But he's lost his identity. He truly believes in this unfair and oppressive system, and he is ready to die for it. Manu Bennett as Grexus and also deliver standout performances. I loved both of them. Their character were developed beautifully, and his love story between them was compelling and believable. They both did a great job. If you are looking for the gritty realism you would find in the HBO series, you should probably keep looking. Spartacus is full frontal, in your face and over the top, and that's what they are going for. This is a gripping story based on historical legend about slaves rising up and overthrowing their Roman master. It's well written, with excellent direction and fantastic performances. If you thought HBO's Rome was slow, Zack Snyder 300 had no depth, and Ridley Scott Gladiator was too mainstream. Spartacus might just be the perfect series for you. It is the perfect blend of all three. It's violent, gory, explicit, and extravagant in its direction. And like I said, those blood effects in the first few episodes are only temporary. So stick with it. It's a great journey, and I had a lot of fun watching it. I look forward to the revisiting the series. The ending is slightly abrupt and feels a bit happy with it. The audience is given closure, and the story is wrapped up nicely. If you have not seen Spartacus yet, I definitely recommend it. But just be aware with you are going for in for, which is blood if you want blood. Watch Spartacus, they will give you blood. It is certainly lifting to final myself reviving the Blu-ray set for Spartacus. The complete series without the series, I would have never unwed why so blue. As we have been converting these factors for the past year, we already have four comprehensive review of the series and each season's accompanying Blu-ray. With that in mind, I do have some brief thought on the series, having recently gone over several episodes from each season. The main thing I love bringing up is how caught for God I was by the huge change in this series early in its run. My initial thought on Sparkle's blood and sand were very apprehensive ones, as the case with most series, especially very ambitious ones. It's often take time for a series to find its voice. With Sparkles, the series secured to be merely something of a 300 nugget, which happened to be have the story of his character. Star's newest series, Sparkle's Blood and Sand, is a difficult show to quantify in its quality. The show is about the rise of Spartacus and the Whitfield as he is taken from his wife Erin and people to be a gladiator in Cop War. All of the major points of the classic story are there, but it's not a show about a story. It's an often silly orgy of blood, violence, and sex. The thing is, Spartacus is very good at achieving what it sets out to be. Even after the first episodes, it's clear that it is the most violent and bloody show ever to appear on cable television. Lives are savored in the especially brutal final fight of the series premiere. Sliced neck pulses with bright and red blood, and the 300 style slow motion fixation on the key event. Ensure that every drop of ruby red liquid gets impulse screen jump. These fight sequences are overwrought with violent intention, but they lose much of their meaning by the fifth or so time you see them. Spartacus uses this offset color battle except for the blood, and it is indeed shockingly to see how vividly detailed each sword strike is displayed until you are just used to watching it happen. As I said, things can get quite silly in the show. The characters make the proclamations such as that is scared. Spartacus Blood and Sand is a show that borrows liberally from other movies and TV series set in the ancient world. It features so low-mo action and the ridiculous digital blood splatter from Zack Snyder's 300. Much of the rest is largely taken from Ridley Scott Gladiator 2000, with a little bit of HBO Rome added for good measure. The dialogue is strikingly particular, the quaint phrasing of a lot of the line. However, apparently ought to be scriptwriter trying to emulate Latin sentence structure, which is commendable by its sound taken stuff that was rejected from Gladiator's script, Blood and Honor. Still, it's so ridiculously and over the top. David Rodriguez on Facebook said Daddy almost everything about Daddy series Gladiators. I can see why people would want to rewatch it. It makes even more sense when you realize that Sam Raimi, the first episode, is perhaps the most ridiculous. The second, while similar to the first stylistically, is also about more devoted to setting up plot line within the House of the Batiatus, the Roman, the Indus, the Spartacus becomes a part of by the third or fourth episode. The series hits a comfortable groove, and once Spartacus, blood and sand get its hook in you, there is no stopping it. In this article, I will go through the first season and point out some of the stuff that I thought was done well, some of the historical detail that I liked, and also to spend some time discussion a few of the most egregious error. If you have not seen this slow show yet, I suggest you skip this article for now. Archer will try to avoid giving too many spoiler. Spark's Blood and Sand takes as its inspiration, of course, the same events as in 1960 film by Stanley Kubrick, but where the later quickly moved to be third server, while his first season of 13 episodes takes its time setting things up. The ancient sources did not tell us a lot about his progress days before the revolt, and so the creator had considerable leeway with how they plotted out this first season. In the very first episode, Red Serpent is depicted as a Thracian, a member of a tribe at war with the rival gladiator, who are portrayed as inhuman monsters. Spartacus and his people fork an alliance with the Roman. They will help the Republic in their war against them, and in turn, the Roman will aid them in killing all the gladiators. And for some reasons, Spartacus and his men wear helmet that bear more generous striking resemblance to the helmet from 300, including the strange astrically extended forehead. As far as costume and military equipment is concerned, does not seem to be too concerned with historical reality. Roman officers wear what look like a musical leader amount for which there is zero proof. Rather than metal seriousness, naturally the Roman in the show also wear those silly leather podium brassiere. They would be Hollywood Romans without them, even if the show was produced in the New Zealand. A map shows that the action takes place near the proponents. It is here very legend. Gladius Greg Parker. Dinesh only deal with the truck with his Thracian, causing Spartacus and his men to rebel and kill a large number of Roman troops. The often unreliable Plausius claim that Spartacus was a slave of it, but in the source he is often associated with gods and may have fought in the arena as a T-Rex, a particular type of the gladiator. However, other sources do claim that he had once fought as a member of the Roman, and Glabus, of course, is a historical character. Even the confrontation within the Spartacus at the early stage are invented. We then got to be seen in what looked like the middle of winter. It foggy and the trees seem to be likely, but it nevertheless be approached in what I expect we are to be assumed as some sort of freak of the nature. A wife Sora is even shown picking some of the fruit. In any event, when she turns around, monsters get her are waiting for her. They manage to capture her, but before anything had been happened, a sword fly through the air and strike down one of the foes in Starz. Over the top explosion of the violence that is normal for this show. Spartacus has arrived just in time to defeat all of them, and he runs away with his wife. However, disaster befalls them at every turn. Their village has been destroyed by their rival, left unchecked by the Roman. This does not make much sense to me. Spartacus in a who was close to be Propentis earlier in the show. When I think of the Thrace, I think of the area north of the Greece proper, north of the Adriatic, which is normally the homeland of the Illyrians So how come Spartacus is in the Adriatic Sea on a ship bound of the Capua? Capua is not located on the Adriatic coast, but on the other side of the Italian. Travel across the Apennines is not a travel affair, and it would make more sense of the ship to travel via the Aegean and the straits of the Sicily toward the Campania. In a third season episode, even says that he never saw as he was shipped via the Adriatic but why. In any event, ancient sources claimed that the city had originally been founded by the Capua was one of the main cities in the campaign. This link is interesting. Some Roman sources suggested that the gladiator concepts were originally invented by the. However, this is the nothing view. Roman sources frequently claimed that some of their costume had been adopted from the Etruscan. Modern scholars have lectured into this idea, depicting the as rather more bloodthirsty than the average ancient people. But in reality, it seems more likely that gladiatorial contests were invented in the Campania sometime before the first and century BC, perhaps inspired by the contest featuring single combat as ones used by the Greek, for example, the duel that is a part of the funereal games of the patriotics in the light. In any event, once is the Capua, we are introduced to the man who would eventually purchase Spartacus and have him trained in his law indus. Quintus Lantus owes gas to by his John in the historical sources. He is actually given as Ganius, but perhaps the writers thought the audiences would then be confused with the gas clapper and so changed it to be Quintus. His wife, Bianca Lawless. He is shown to be convincing in the best tradition of Roman leading ladies. The amphitheater in the Capua itself is shown as a relatively grand structure that appeared to be modeled on a theater that was originally constructed during the region of the Augustan. See, for example, the photos in this. Indus arena is condemned to fight against for gladiator. The battle is shot in the over-the-top manner of most depictions of violence in the show. If there is one word that describes Spartacus' blood and sand, it is trash. No, that's not to say this is the garbage in any way. On the contrary, it is a surprisingly good piece of the television, drenched in sense after sense of pure trash, drawing itself in the myth of the Roman excesses. Spartacus sets out to tell the classic film of the same name, a lesser known historical figure upon which he was based, stretching that story out over the course of a few seasons. But instead of characters plotting and scheming in a quiet room apart from the rest of the world, they often do so in lavish pool, while being serviced by slave who they have no qualm about having sex with, while talking with co-conspirate such as the nature of the Spartacus is his blood-soaked, sex-fueled, out the top hurry into this lazy, late-night television with terrible special effect that try desperately to evoke the look and feel of Zack Snyder 300 while lacking the visual acumen or budget to even deserve the comparison. So why do I like it? Why it is even worth watching? Because the writing and performances far exceed the low rent that is the selling point for a portion of the audiences. Are the sense of the character having discussion while having sex? Yes, but the actor are so good that they make is believable. They focus you like a laser upon what they are saying rather than what they are doing. Sex becomes so passive that is simple something in the background, something going on to break their monotony of people sitting around in the old world set. The series works because the makers understand the fundamental nature of great epic storytelling, that every hero has to suffer for us to truly identify with him and appreciate his plight. And that's exactly what happened here. Even up to the end of the first season, Spartacus is a suffering, nothing goes his way. Everything gets worse and worse, even as it appeared to get better. And when the bloodletting began, you cheer on his animalistic brutality and the cruel way he dispatched those under whom he has suffered. Base cause any unrepentantly, the story and actor telling always transcend the overdone silliness to which it often sinks. making this a type of series you want to both celebrate and weigh your finger out simultaneously. Some might argue that you have to give yourself over to the exploitation, but I think ultimately the sex and violence do a great job, illustrating exactly what it was that so troubled the Roman Empire, and created Spartacus as a truly just man cast among barbarism, parading around as civility. There is so much intelligence behind the series that it cannot be discounted for its pioneering fault. It is something that, once began, become hard to put down, and now that it's on DVD and Blu-ray, you can relish every delicious, decadent moment of season 1. The box set comes with the standard array of special features. Most of which you should be familiar with making of gag reel, origin of the show. The only interesting variation is a sizzle reel of about 8 minutes of the bloodiest moment from the series. All cut together to music, as these scenes tend to be showcases the restraint of the budget. It wasn't my cup of tea, but if the violence interests you, this really should do the trick. Historical fiction is quite a popular genre for both TV and film. Between hit series like The Bridegroom and The Outlander, it has certainly found its place in the market. One such series to be make it mark is Spartacus, a TV show based on the real-life Spartacus, who led his slave uprising in Rome in 73 BC. The series saw moderate popularity at the time of the release and earned the Asian Award for Best TV Action Series and Best TV Hero. Spartacus ran for a total of 3 seasons in as many years. It's been a decade since the final season of Spartacus aired, but new interest has arisen in the franchise, and in fact, a sequel series has been greenlighted for production. While we wait for the new content to become to fruition, we can look back on what Starz has given us to admire it for what it is, as well as what it lacks. Here's every season in the original Spartacus series ranked. Its second season is the Spartacus series and arguably the worst. The season follows the Spartacus after he and his gladiator killed his bosses and escaped from his gladiator training school. One of the biggest reasons for the fall of this Spartacus rating this recasting of the title character, and Whitfield, who played Spartacus his blood and sand, had to bow out due to the cancer diagnosis and was replaced by Liam, while Starz was unsure if recasting was even impossible. Whitfield insisted that the show go on without him. They being said, fans obviously were not as sure about the change. The very first season of the series was given the name Blood and Sand to help significantly Spartacus' sacrifices as he was condemned to the Colosseum, where he fighting for his life is seen as nothing more than the entertainment zone. Spartacus will come to be realizes that the battle outside of this arena are just as he faces off against lust and corruption. Blood and the Sand premiered in January 2010 and undoubtedly the best season in the series as it has a stronger focus on the Spartacus' earlier life before his legendary time, leading this club after sizing his Rome. Although critical reception of the first season was originally mixed, it became more positive as the season progressed. Between hit series like the Brighton and the Outlander, it has certainly found its place in the market. One such series to be make it a mega Spartacus, a TV show based on a real life Spartacus who led his slave uprising in Rome in 73 BC. Rushing headlong into this final with a true sense of revolution, Spartacus Weakness is said to be complete and incredible as a strong season by finishing what it had started with Kill Them All way back in April of 2010. Moreover, Spartacus Vegans faces an unlikely challenger in its own storytelling by having to face the prospect of exceeding the kind of epic grandiously on display in the episode like the Libertas and last week's Monster. Suffice to say, the season final read of these scores does not disappoint. This episode is nearly well to well action that gloriously upend this short series. After square to the several lingering plot thread, and once more Red finds the man Spartacus become for the pending third season, whatever it may be subtitled. As storm cloud blew over, Spartacus' band of the rebel is nearly undone by the impatience of Nemesis. Ranchi man after they attempt to escape the mountain and take on a small band of Roman soldiers. Unfortunately, their escape is met by the arrival of Ashur and the Egyptian, were it not for the intervention of Myra. And eventually Spartacus, Croesus, Janicus, Agron, three surely would have met their end. Sadly, it is Myra who is dealt the death blow. And while she and Spartacus and had been growing apart after the events in the balance her death bring to the forefront the season for Spartacus. Weakness and set the tone for rest of the episode, one in which any character, no matter the importance he or she have to the series narrative, may become a casualty before this season is officially in the record book. Meanwhile, in the part of the seat below, Glaber and the Ashore is vital away term, waiting for the rebel to stop, adopt, and mountain by fixating on the life they will lead once this objectionable uprising is finally quelled. Such pleasant are put on hold. However, as the arrival of and hurdles in every Glober's arrangement with Ashore, effectively putting to rest any hopes that Thracian may have had of transferring the Ludus and wife into the house of the Ashore. One good turn deserves another thought, as Glaber cannot have any loose end. So he orders his newly dutiful wife to eliminate him before the couple embark on their return to the Rome. If losing out on the promises of the house of Ashore was not bad enough, the Syrian quickly loses the loyalty of this man and very nearly his life at the hands of the Egyptian, rather than simply kill him. Glaber sends Ashore to the negotiate the terms of this Spartacus surrender. Naturally, the rebel politely refuses this fieldy message to Glaber had were separated from his shoulders first. At first, it seems unlikely that both Myra and Nevia would fall in the same episode. But despite her age, Ashore appeared poised to once more await his ice jaw of death, at least long enough for Xerxes to kill him. After a heart-wrenching and brutal brawl, ready to cut Nevia's throat pauses to add ridicule, but in doing so open himself up to a devastating slash from Nevia's blade that almost certainly robbed him for his weapon of choice. While Ashur gets a verbal shot at Nevia before she hacks his head off the three vicious blow, the smithing of her tormentor is the beginning of Nevia's transformation from victim to the fearsome warrior. If you thought Ashur's death brought about a sense of closure, then the going on back at the Ludus were appropriately mind-blowing all season long. It was clear that aim and game plan that was known only to her, and the end goal she had in mind, by the unborn spawn of the Spartans and Legion, of course. The liberty line of the night was saying in the mother, to be your child. You are but a vessel carrying a gift from God to the house of the Batiatus. Now then, let us see it unwrapped. Having cut his child from Lydia, Lucretia makes her way to the cliff's edge, and in as dramatic goodbye as could possibly be imagined join her husband in the afterlife, bringing with her the child she failed to give her in life. But right of the gods is not done. Yet after descending this sheer face of the gladiator four began the assault on Glaber's camp by turning the Roman army's fiercely. Catapults against them, and with that climatic battle is upon us. Having delivered the final scene of so many memorable characters, it stood to reason that only Glaber would be left on the final's bloody chopping block. But not so, says series creator Stephen Reignard in coming to aid of the man who betrayed him. Battle weary and severely injured from his last run-in with the Egyptians save. Life but fails instead, and it's hard to see the once proud doctor go. He is that act to the real form. As for Glaber, he is that services as a final act to the amazing character that has brought Spartacus from the unknown to slave gladiator and now The leader of the army is united by a singular purpose to bring freedom to those long suffering under the empire. It also shows how Spartacus is said to be take on the new challenge of telling a larger. More than a decade after Spartacus went off the air, a spin-off series entitled Spartacus, House of Ashur has been announced to take viewer back to ancient Rome once again. Beginning with its first season in 2010, Spartacus concerned a real-life eponymous figure who was a gladiator who led a successful slave uprising between the years 73 and 71 BCE, with an eye toward action and history. Spartacus stretched out across three exciting seasons on Starz before finally being cancelled in 2013, arriving on the small screen around the same time as contemporaries like Game of the Throne. Spartacus had plenty of the action but supplemented it with historical intrigue. Spartacus was not always historically accurate, it struck a final balance between the total fabrication and the true story from ancient history. Many months after the last update arrived, the latest news comes in the form of a teaser trailer and release window for Spartacus. House of Ashur, the sub 1 minute teaser revealed a returning Ashur as a returning to arena in the Drumland challenging series, highlighting the show eroticism and thrilling action. The trailer features several moments of gladiator doing battle in front of a hungry audiences. It does not give away much. The trailer does conclude with the reveal that Spark's House of Ashur is set to arrive on the stars in fall 2025. Sadly, the show won't be dropping anytime soon, and a premium cable channel was not able to narrow the release window down to specific date yet. However, Starz will provide a more detailed synopsis of what's in store when Ashur returns later in 2025. House of Ashur will be a history-bending, erotic, thrilling roller coaster experiences. It would take until May 2024 for all the detail to come out. The revival of Spartacus was first teased back in February 2023. Upon original announcement, showrunner Steven Say was attached to what was a more straightforward continuation. However, in the intervening year, the project took a different turn and became Spartacus, House of Ashur. It's unclear why so many changes took place, but the series has since solidified creativity. In January 2025, it was announced that House of Ashur will premiere in fall. The first name attached to the upcoming spin-off Spartacus was original series actor who returned as the villainous Ashur. The character originally met his doom on the slope of Mount when he was dispatched by Navia before he could betray the slave uprising and earn a hefty reward for the Roman government. However, Spartacus, House of the Ashur is giving viewer an alternate timeline where Ashur was successful. However, Starz has already disclosed the rest of the main cast of House of Ashur, and veteran character actor Graham MC Davis is joining the show as Ashur. Ivana and Shamika will play Messia and Hilara, respectively Ashur's household slave who are engaged in a love triangle with their master. Rival gladiators Starz and will oppose Ashur, while Chenika Davis will play the female gladiator. Claudia Beck plays scheming politician who plots Ashur's downfall, and India Shaw's maid player her daughter Virgia. Fans have been waiting to return to the world of Spartacus for a decade, but the announcement of Spartacus House of Ashur is certainly a strange approach. Instead of a direct continuation, the new series will instead turn back, dialogue animation, an alternate version of events where one crucial detail is changed. In the original series, the evil Ashur was paid handsomely by the Roman government to undermine and stop the bargaining slave uprising. Fortunately for the heroes, he was unsuccessful and was eventually killed. In Spartacus' House of Ashur, the backstabbing gladiator is instead able to stop the uprising and is gifted his own gladiator training school by the grateful Roman elite. Assigning a villain as the main character is an interesting change of pace, and some new conflict will need to be surfaced to make Ashore a hero worth rooting for. The series could also present a butterfly effect and show how one tweak of the tramline changed the course of history. Freed from the bonds of reality, the entire history of the ancient world could be rewritten. In January 2025, Starz offered the first look at Spartacus' House of the Azure. Via a teaser trailer, the sub 1 minute clip revealed the return of Nick Tarabe as a titular character, while also highlighting many affection scenes set within the arena. While it did not give much else away, the teaser served as a chance for Stars to reveal that the show will premiere in fall 2025. The Gladiator show Spartacus aired in Stars over a decade ago, and it's still dominating streaming Stars a month before its sequel show. The original series is a fictionalized takes on the life of real-life gladiators Spartacus. It ran for 3 seasons between 2010 and 13, but the long-awaited sequel series Spartacus House of the Azure is set to be premiered this fall. According to data from Flix Patrol, TV series streaming on the stores right now is Spartacus, followed by titles such as Three Woman, Sweet Pea, and Outlander, which are newer or have had more recent seasons. This is compelling data, especially given that the upcoming sequel series still doesn't have a confirmed release date. With so many streaming services producing original television, it's not surprising that cable channels like Starz have fallen behind. Many of the best Star series came during 2010, such as Ash vs. Evil Dead and Black Sail, and our 2D network was never quite at the HBO level. It was still a reliable source of entertaining television. The ongoing appreciation for Spartacus, as evidenced by its current streaming data. It is reason why this show merited a sequel in the first place, especially after such a long term. These numbers also indicate that House of Azure could end up being a bigger hit than anyone is expecting, especially given how limited the marketing has been. Prior to House of Azure's release, Starz also has a sequel TV series releasing The Outlander, which means two of the platform's most widely recognized show will essentially have a new beginning, a joy for long-term fans of the title and a potential opening for new viewers who are not willing to catch up on the older title. It's doubtful that either of these releases will be breaking record or pulling Netflix's number, but it will be excellent contribution for Starz, which has not had many major releases in recent years. As someone who's watched particularly every notable Roman history adaptations and quite a few of the unknown nice one, I'm happy to see Spock does its success. While I don't think it has the same as HBO's Rome, which has its own flaw, Spock is one of the most entertaining series in this setting. I understand that House of the Azure is just a mini series, but it would be wonderful to see it have some success, potentially leading to the other like it. Aside from the German series Barbarians, which premiered on Netflix, there are not many recent ancient Rome TV, so I would recommend I'm rooting for Spartacus. Spartacus be debuted on the Stars in 2010 with a ferocity that set it apart from everything else on TV. The series was not content with it being another sword and sandal retelling, going directly for the throat with the bloody gladiator battle and stories of revenge, grief, and betrayal. The slow motion fight clearly influenced by Zack Snyder 300. The show graphic bloodshed, but it was the exploration of power, loyalty, and freedom that kept us invested. Even when a real life tragedy forced the series to adapt, it never lost momentum. Across all 4 seasons of Spartacus, the show built toward a final that achieved satisfying closure, proving the series wasn't all just sex and shock value. And 15 years later, Spartacus has returned to Netflix on September 22 after leaving it years ago. Revisiting Spartacus today feels like a stepping back into one of TV's wildest swing, from blood spraying in orc, sword clashing in the operatic slow motion. The show embarrassed excess without apology, yet it never let its carnage drown out its story. That balance keeps it gripping more than a decade later. In 2011, lead actor Andy Whitfield tragically passed away after being diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, assumed the role Whitefield's plays from season 2 onward. The battles mattered because they were never just Blasford Spartacus fought for his wife's memory and the freedom of his people, clashed with the rebels while chasing his back and his love for Nivea. Even pulling string from the stand turned every victory into the leverage. Each strike in the arena carried personal stake, which made the violence sting long after the sword were lowered. 15 years on, few series have matched its stylistic flavor. It was pulpy, it was over the top, but it also had something to say. That rare combination explains why Spartacus is still worthy rewatched or discovery in 2025. Spartacus has always been a little harder to track down compared to other being named historical drama on streaming. It aired on Starz, which meant only certain audiences followed it week to week. Now the entire saga Blood and Sand, Guards of the Arena, and War of the Damned is heading to Netflix on September 22, making it far easier for new viewers to discover. Is the perfect time to catch up before the 10 episode sequel series called Spartacus House of Ashur was built to be watched as one long story. It began as a tale of revenge and grows into a full scale rebellion, with each season raising the stake. On Netflix's viewer will finally get to follow that arc without gap, seeing how the will spectrum is anchored by a carefully structured rise and fall. I will start things off with a personal admission of guilt when it comes to anything set for back in time, especially those that involved sword and shield, had horses and bloody exotic battle. I'm usually a fan movies like Gladiator and Braveheart or TV show like HBO Rome have all left me gratefully satisfied upon watching, and I am always hungry for more of the same. Because of this, you could say I might be a little blessed toward a show like Stars, Spartacus, Blood and Sand. And you could be right. The moment and I saw that this show was coming, I was filled with excitement and could not wait to get my eyes on it. But to be perfectly honest, things did not start up too well for me and the show. The pilot episode was a bit of a rocky start. It crossed me as a combination of Gladiator and 300, but the overpowering stylistic effect. Intent was pure, and the plan was to give a real graphic novel fate to be sure. Did not feel nearly as fitting as they did with the Zack Snyder. Ultra fun tale of 300 Spartan, and it all comes off as a bite too cheesy at time. Even so, with my undying love of such things, I decided to soldier on and see what happened. This was without doubt an incredibly good decision. Spartacus' blood and sand tell the story of an unnamed Thracian who, along with his fellow mariner, have joined the Roman in their fight in hopes of protecting their. Even with the success of movies like 300 about the Spartan warrior and series like Astro's Rome about Roman, Spartacus stood on its own as unique insight into the life and time of the gladiator prior to be Spartacus's famous rebellion. Not much is known about the gorgeous prior to be his revolt, so the New Zealand series spanned 3 seasons, depicting his early life from 73 to 71 BC as a gladiator in the arena. For fans of nudity and excessive violence, it offered both in the abundance, but as fans spent time around Spartacus and his fellow gladiator, they realized this series also offered complex character studies of a variety of men doing what they must to survive. It also offered a glimpse into the and pretty world of the Austroasiatic Roman who bought and sold them like chattel. Here are all the characters from hit series, broken down into their respectively personalities according to their Myers-Briggs indicator type. One of the most skilled gladiator in the gladiator house of the Graces was a skilled, competent, and a great noise showman. In true fashion, is he had a flair for the dramatic living in a moment whenever he entered in a ring. He liked to see immediate result and was hard on himself when he failed to live up to his own expectations. Croesus was not smart as he was a biggest risk taker, which made him a perfectly alive in Spartacus's rebellion. Estives are often not best at planning ahead, and he may not have been able to see a future where gladiator were free. He did not ask questions, he just fought his hardest. Nevia was a slave in the house of the Batiatus, owned by her elevated status in the home, in short, slightly better treatment. Not when it was discovered she was having an affair with the result gladiator. Crixus until she was banished to the remains, her hardworking and dutiful traits served with the masters well. Her comparisons and resilience shone in her dealing with the Crixus, who she knew was not only being used in the arena to line pursue, but also be Lord Sita, who viewed him as less than human and a means for sexual conquest. Like most, it was her ability to keep things running smoothly, then let their love affair remain a secret as long as it did. A famous tradition warrior known for instigating a rebellion that freed his fellow gladiator and grew to the encompass feeling as slaves in the fleet of Rome. Spartacus was also a loving husband to his wife Sora. As a true Spartacus hated the restrictions of his Roman overlord and believed all people should be treated with equal respect. Because Spartacus was an ISFP and believed in the revolutionary ideas that few had conceived of, he was a polarizing forces in his ludus. Some gladiator did not side with his belief at first. The wife of the gracious Gladius Glaber and the daughter of the senator Albanius is an extremely wealthy young woman who enjoys the gossip, making pretty and displays of her superiority. A friend Joe and her husband. She is often at her indoors, ogling their gladiator, especially Spartacus. And into the SFP fashion, she must be the center of attention. She will do whatever is necessary to gain favor with her fellow wealthy Roman noble, such as purchase a gladiator to beat or fascinate with her layer if it will impress them. Like all, she lives in the moment and almost exclusively for immediate gratification. Her pregnancy alone later in the series almost inside over the paternity much to the delight. A serious-minded man chosen by the Batiatus to literally whip the gladiator of his indoors into shape. Ominiums is intimidating, dignified, and demanded every fighter bring honor to be House of the Batiatus. Like all, his demeanor is often reserved and aloof, bordering on formal, but behind his calculating mind there is much wisdom to be gained. Spartacus soon discovered his, and Onemius became a good friend and mentor him. Despite the difference in their station, when the house of the Betis falls in the spectre, unsurprisingly, believe he has no purpose left, clinging as he has to be personal value and tradition of him. Spartacus helped him see that his principle and Molche also needed in the conflict ahead. The wife of the Quintus Lyorcita is a moderately wealthy woman in the capo that lives above her husband's India's after gladiator, floating around in a beautifully gown and jewelry despite her inconsistent fancies. She is incredibly focused on around her and her charismatic wiles aid in her and her husband's social advancement. Overly concerned with the opinions of others, and like most, this dictated her action. She tried to take legitimate connection with people of false station, such as the Kleber's wife and gladiator uses as a sexual plaything, but she soon finds I cannot manipulate them and expect they won't resent her for it, no matter how charming she thinks she is. Once a gladiator in the indoors of Batiatus, Ashur found himself becoming his aunt boy after he was crippled at the hands of fellow gladiator Classes as an Ashur demonstrated cunning, intuition, and adaptability, all traits which served involvingly subterfuge, and the blackmail of rival. True to being an Ashur had his own set of principles and values which, once broken by others, made him incredibly resentful. He secretly longed to return to the arena and embarrass of the gladiator brotherhood. The mockery of his injuries ensured he would never trust them, and that he would only plot a downfall. A Roman commander bearing the title of Lictus, and later in the series Praetor, Glaber is an ambitious and forceful leader who was responsible for enslaving Spartacus and his wife. The true embodiment of an he is logically deceived and power hungry. Often have a hard time being empathetic, especially when it involves another person's perspective, which ensures Glaber will always look down on those of lower social standing. He has little regard for other, even his wife Lydia, favoring instead to focus on his own exploit. Varro took a non-traditional road to become a gladiator, whereas most are forced into his penance for crime they committed. Like a true, Various has a very candid and boisterous nature. He has no delusions about how he world around him functions and he makes the most of performing in it. He is warm, generous, and kind of reality among the other bloodthirsty gladiator he is paired with. His inspiring personality makes him a good friend to Spartacus. As an ambitious socialite and a competitive owner of a prestigious gladiator house, I am to be one of the most influential and powerful men in Capua. Like most, he liked to know be in a position of leadership and in control and will slowly remove his emotional involvement from his action if they guarantee his social accent, no matter how reckless like murder. As a landsetter, his position was low in society, but as an he used his gladiator skill well in advancing his status among the noble populace. Getting into the financial or social trouble did not impede his plan as an his calculated scheming and ability to talk his way out of any predicament ensured his success. Spartacus is one of those shows that just grip you and does not let go, particularly during the 13 episodes journey of the thrilling first season, Blood and Sand. The show follows one of the most iconic figures in ancient history while incorporating the rich element of old Roman society and its unique culture of gladiator game. Season 1 focuses on the rather humble origin as Spartacus as a slave and a gladiator, and it generally works as an epic, inspirational story in overcoming adversity. Still, there are times where the show can feel a bit lacking, whether through depressing, lack of action, or a watering down of emotional depth. What they said is sought through each of the 13 episodes of Blood and Sand, which he covered the 5 best and 5 weakest of the season, according to the IMDb. Also, the Tring in the Pit acts as an exciting episode that promises you with action is something for a frustrating detour from the rest of the show and the Spartacus character arc. The episode's grimy, gory art style and the savage nature remind one of Mad Max rather than the grandiose nature of Spartacus. The sole purpose of this episode seems to be knock three Spartacus doing a peg, a sort of humbling as it were, as he is being demoted from the glory of the arena to fight for small wages in the underbelly of Roman society. He is relegated to this grim and seemingly hopeless position because of this shameful surrendering to Crixus in the arena. Spartacus must now fight and clear his way back through the dregs, wielding spiked knuckle-ratted tennis sword and death shield. It's a cool sort of rage and riches showcase, but it does little to serve the overall narrative. And the gritty brawl that takes place just are not as exciting to watch as a full-blown gladiator duel, rather than focus on the gladiator training and arena battle for the bulk of its intrigues. These episodes explore the unique practice of Roman. It's also stripe up some drama between two of the season key characters and mix up the two pairings of a arranged by the post Spartacus is bad Whitney, who had planned to sleep with the Crixus, while her friends and requested to sleep with Spartacus. This clever plot twist is revealed to be after that is done, and the two remove each other's mask. We find the ad deceived who she got grown to dislike and wanted to keep Crixus for herself. This vital drama is further complicated by the fact that Lichelia happens to be the wife of the Kleber, who has essentially become the sworn enemy of Spartacus by this point. This episode has an 8.3 on IMDb, which is not surprising even. It contains some creative plot devices and some of the more amusing twists on TV. In this episode, Spartacus is forced to participate in fight that contain some special circumstances which added a creative twist to the standard face office. This battle is meant to play out as a reenactment of a historical Roman battle. The catch: there is a certain emotional resonance with this unique scenario, and with the subplot, one of which focuses on the tragic separation between the Peros and his slain lover. A fellow gladiator named Bersa, still Spartacus's battle feature in this episode, is pretty uneventful and lacking excitement. Even going against his foes, he is far better equipped and trained than his inept opponent, who are merely outmatched criminals pulled from the street and tossed into the arena. Contemporary that, this episode has an 8 only. In Shadow Games, Cracus and Spartacus are forced to team up and fight as a signal destructive unit in the arena. There is also the frightening revelation that you will have to secure a fungacy Briod who has never been defeated in battle. As the only man to have fought him and lived, Doctor trained the two in the fight for the ages. While the fight seemed to go south quickly for our two heroes, they team up and overcome the massive obstacle standing in their way for glory. This is partly thanks to a disparate underbox tragedy by Crixus. This episode is exciting for visual standpoint and act as a creative metaphor of toppling the unbeatable giant, which will soon be, and in some ways, Rome itself. It also foreshadows the two rival, Spartacus and Crixus joining hand, which will prove crucially during their slave remote. Although blood and sand eventually picks up its pace, it regresses to a rather slow-moving and uneventful sequences of events for much of its third episode. Legends, a good portion of episode focus on Spartacus' basic training and a blossoming friendship between Lord Sitia and Lycia. All of this builds up to the relative high point of the episode. During the celebration, Spartacus may never to face Silas's Pharocovature. This led to a fiery anti-Semitic showdown in the arena, which is Silas emphatically wins. This episode has an even 8 on. Party Favors managed to contain some of the most emotional scenes in an already emotional series, leading up to one of the biggest tearjerker during season 1. This episode shows just how cool the Roman elite could be, reminding viewers that, despite the accolades and cheer, most in the society still viewed gladiator as slave to use at their disposal. During the episode, the son Numerius holds a birthday party arranged by the Batiatus and the Lorcita. What began as a harmless entertainment with Vojan sword quickly gives way to a gut-wrenching scene in which Spartacus is forced to kill his good friend hero. What makes it even darker is in fact that this is done merely for the amusement of Numerius. The crushing implication for Spartacus and the jeering shift in tone during this episode have quite an impression and is a good reason it earned an 8.5. Despite being the second episode, this feels like the show's true introduction, as Spartacus is thrust into his new life as a gladiator under the House of for the first time. We are also introduced to his friends and companions, including the Vero. The episode sets the stage for the ongoing rivalry between the Spartacus and the champion of Capua, Crixus. The episode feels akin to sort of the oppressive gladiator version of a high school drama, as cliche friendship and rivalries are established within the Ludus. It's a decent motivational story and basically sets up the season's premiere in addition to providing our protagonist the motivation he needs to press on. Informs he can save his captured wife, Sora, from the clutches of slavery. Beyond this element, there is not much action, emotional resonance, or substance to be and general during this episode. In the funnel of blood and sand contained the season climax from an action standpoint. This is episodes just PD season's emotional climax. On the one hand, you can look at the revolutions as a series of events that sets the table for the epic conclusion to follow. But it's also a grippingly emotion and rich episode in its own right. Spartacus' attempt to gather rich the average slave and gladiator to assist him in his rebellion. Yet we soon discover that this will be no easy task, as Myra expressed her concern, explaining the danger which poses to all slaves in his house. Culpable or not, Spartacus also struggled to convince Crixus, who won't simply run off from his life, as a triumphant gladiator who is recently regained much of his former glory. Tensions mount an uneasy level during revelations not just from these resistance Spartacus made, but from a pivotal exchange between the Clapper and the Navius confrontation, where it's a gut-wrenching episode that keeps you on the edge of your seat. It is an 8.5 MDB. While most of Spartacus' blood and sand is laser focused on the famed Roman label's time training as a gladiator, this pilot episode is very much in own entirety. The show's premiere takes on a very different feel as it hones in one event leading up the capture of the Spartacus and his wife Sora. It also covers the Thracian and Roman battle with the barbarian hordes that terrorized the village of Thrace. This Spartacus' origin story, or more accurately, historical fiction, thus provides some exciting action scene and heartfelt moment. Yet the gritty outdoor environment and he emphasizes on full-fledged ancient battle makes it feel more like a lesser version of 300 rather than the more interesting character-driven gladiatorial drama. It matures into the while it is not a bad episode in its own right. It feels disjointed from the rest of the season and does not do a great job of saying what the show really about. It has a 7.6 rating on MDB. This is when everything needs the fans, so to speak, that major payoff of Spectre's epic first season. All of Spectre's trial and tribulation seem to be building up to this grand moment of the rebellion, and it makes for an absolutely epic showdown. The show's trademark action and a copious amount of gore are at an all-time high, and the chaotic events that transpire at the House of the certainly live up to the title of this episode. Spartacus has finally initiated a full-blown revolt, which he and the other gladiator had been plotting covertly. Pushed to the edge by the betrayers, who forced Spartacus to engage in a battle to the death with the Crixus to insecure the patronage of the Clapper. He feels that it is a charm to strike. The gladiator gave them to show off left them, but not the trap they had hoped for. This thrilling conclusion to Spartacus' days as slave and a gladiator has it all. Its visual spectacle and an emotional roller coaster from start to finish. It has a 9.3 rating on IMDb and deservedly so. The short-lived Spartacus series on Starz was anything but small in its scope. It presented an epic plot of the Roman rebel slave and the gladiator Spartacus and his triumphant rise and fall. You have got awesome face-off in the arena, circumstances between the fiction, and even full-fledged battle scene with cinema-level quality. This fight and battle are all gripping in their own way. So let's lack up our armor and grab our sword as we revisit the 10 greatest fight and battle scene from the exciting Spartacus Blood and Sand. Following the premiere episode of Blood and Sand, in which Spartacus single-handedly takes out 4 men, this battle humanizes our protagonist a bit. We are meant to be look upon Crixus as an unstoppable force, the champion of Coppa, and this prestige is reinforced with his manhandling of Spartacus, similar to the capture of Sora. Spartacus' wife, this humbling at the hands of the Crixus, help motivated by newly acquired gladiator to fight his way to glory. The action is scene itself also provides plenty of thriller. The clashing of the heavy armor, along with the view from inside, each combatant's helmet adds a gritty sense of realism to the fight. This scene, which occurs during the episode's revelations, provides some need with Roman soldier during the scene tricks to secure the patronage of glorious Glaber. To do this, our hero, the same ex-soldier who betrayed Glaber, must fight a band of trained and fully armored soldiers as he watches. The fight is merely a demonstration to showcase Spartacus' hardened training in the arena, but it ends up being one of the highlights of the season. The scenery of the battle is a refreshing change of pace. The entry of the House of the complete with a shallow pool as key battleground. The most interesting fight in blood and sand are often the most underboxed. This is certainly the case with the gritty skirmish, which plays out more like a bloody boxing match than a gladiator duel. The grimy atmosphere, the oddness of this crowd, and the anything goes mantra of wielding a dart, spike, and the hook hanging from the wall make the arena look distinguished by the comparison. Our peak introduction is both amusing and creepy. We see him spotting the face of the Spartacus, fallen peer, a gladiator that's been branded and condemned to the fight with him. This ball of broad face is fun in its own way, as our hero has essentially reached rock bottom at this point. While this fighting sequence does not offer a tone of drama in terms of the visual spectacle, it carries a unique level of emotions weight. No, that is not exciting to watch, especially since our protagonist faces up against six opponents. During this battle in the arena, Spartacus is forced to take on a criminal dressed as is Kingsman. To add insult to injury, he must dress as famous Roman officer is responsible for slaying several of his people years ago. This is meant to be a celebratory arrangement for the who is looking to an arena. The conclusion of this fight is also symbolic and significant, taking its sport as one of the few fights that does not involve spectators who is injured at this time. This battle of the Primus Hiovai Crixus was only the champion of the Capo. The fight is unique in that it contains more bouts of this fitness and fineness rather than the brute force. But more significantly, this scene represents a great redemption arc from who has married Badim and cast aside by in favor of the Spartacus. The pilot episode of Blood and Sand, the Red Serpent, is an emphatic way to kick off his gladiator rise to glory with his abundance of awesome action scene. One of the best come right on the hill of Spartacus defying his Roman commander. After being informed he will get into the backup from the Roman forces to save his village from the chaotic, Spartacus began his journey as one-man army. He is first off to save his wife from a group of greater predators, which he initiated with an awesome shot, in which he wipes a dagger right past Sora and head of an attacker. Sora then joins in the partaking in a neatly choreographed skirmish. Do not shed here. There is no greater victory than to fall from this world a free man. The forces of Spartacus and Cassius are coming together for a final clash. On the outskirts of Rome, Spartacus and his inner circle meet to parley with the Roman attempt to advance on a masked rebel, but fall into a hidden spike niche they dug in the night. The rebels then use Pang to span the ditch and attack the front lines. Zone and Saxa attack the Roman rear with the horsemen they have, sowing confusion and letting them attack the Roman artillery. Spartacus catches sign of the crisis and pursues him off the battlefield. He kills all of his guard, but takes several deep injuries. To his credit, simply arms himself and says, "Come hider." The two fight, and Spartacus eventually disarms his after conjuring his own wrist arm. However, just before killing the Crucius, common soldier, and fall to his knee, fatally him away, but the damage is none. At the same time, people are overwhelmed by the eventually surrounded and personally knocked out by the Caesar himself. With the third silver war oven, Caesar's orders for the already captured slaves on the Appian Way, which includes even the innocent core. However, Pompey has stolen the credit for Spartacus' defeat, which Crassus fought because it will make him and Caesar Pompey's ally, allowing them to reconstruct a fearsome triumph that they can bend the course of history. Gannicus also glorified find happiness and peace in his death as he sees spirit welcoming him into the afterlife and his personal Elysium are people worshipping him in the arena. Meanwhile, Spartacus finds his own spaces in that, as although not all survived, some managed to gain the mountain path and will be able to find true freedom beyond the reach of Rome, and he will see Sora on the afterlife. As rain falls upon Spectre's dead, Agron and the other will slaves bury him in the unmarked grave with the organs still placed upon the ground above his final resting place, where he lies under the fated red serpent before to walk toward the path of freedom. Ganishus and Nicestus historically broke away from Spartacus and met here and in a separate battle. Here both Gannicus and Nicasar drew. A separate example is the Ganius seeing a vision of the Oneimatus before him as he dies on the cross. Patrick mentioned, however, did not return. They just used the archive footage of him. Spartacus has flashback of Sura, Myra, and Tivero while fighting Crassus. Sibylle has full frontal nudity in her love scene with Gannicus, and he actually make her the last character to have a nude scene in the series. Case is also trained to fight while shirtless and very sweaty, making his double as worked out fan services. The episode starts with the various characters cutting to Romans and declaring they are Spartacus. This is revealed to be a observation strategy, as a confused Roman command is receiving report of Spartacus at multiple locations. Top his credit, Cassius continue to insist on being in a mix whenever possible. Lamb shaded when the Romans used to test your formation, Navia remarked it fell to the predicted maneuver, as it turned out the rebel and been hoping for them to do so. As the plan was to pull out later, hidden beneath the ground and climb over the shared information. It started raining as his practices die. A variations Ganius says that if he dies in the battle, he will wait for Sibylle in the afterlife. The newborn baby that Cor and had delivered previously is among the survivors that escaped the Pompey's forces. Sibylle gives the Ganixus her carved wooden idol for good luck. During the battle, he dies while she survives. Argon, manly gear, Auricas, absolutely weeps when Spartacus dies in front of him. Crassus starts crying in horror when he hears Jetty report care to get back at him. Cody sources Crassus says that he is good man who does what he must. When looking upon just lives being the glorified, including the core herself, Crassus tells Castor that I do what I must. The episode opens with a nod to the famous I am Spartacus moment from the movie. Not so above it all, Sibylle is a cute him and an all-loving hero, but even she stated that she is prey for the Roman to fall to better man. Crassus forces defeat Spartacus, but Crassus does not get to retrieve the killing blow. Pompey takes all the credit for the victory, and with his son dead and lover purified, it's clear Crassus has not everything except his status. And if go by historical record, his wife has plenty of affair with other men, to the point that the Romans joked about none of their children looked like him. Caesar was in fact one of her partner. Sora was fully nagged when she was taken by the clever man in the red serpent. Spartacus flashback to his show, our red dresses uncover her modesty. While Spartacus forces and managed to keep the Roman at bay for a while using the guerrilla warfare and unexpected practices. In a battle with their army seriously depleted, engaging superior numbers of the Roman Empire, they are finally defeated. Even for a series where Hollywood healing is an abundance organ, hands are crippled from his crucifixion in the previous episode, to the point he can longer hold a sword. Spartacus has an action movie style due to the death with the Crassus. Spartacus has an action movie style due to the death with the Crassus, as be fighting the final antagonist of the series. But since he is the figurehead for the whole rebellion and Crassus the imperator, he is killed from behind by the other soldier. Core may have had justified reason to defect to Spartacus' side, and Croesus may have been genuinely in love with her. But if she was not punished by him, then the Senate would have done so. As he lies dying, Spartacus must the finally see Sora again. Janicus also says that if he dies in the battle, we will wait for Sibyl in the afterlife with the ornaments and militia to keep him company. As in real life, Rome, the rebellion's strategies are countless, intelligent, and effective. But Rome simply refuses to run out of men and even fire artillery. They know that will hit their own to gain the edge when they start losing ground. In a most agonizing yet authentic example, Spartacus goes too well to the kill, Croesus the allied and each line and comes within a hair breadth of killing him. Croesus is able to put up a pretty competitive fight against Spartacus, perhaps the sole Roman in the entire series, to ever go to term with him. But Spartacus had already taken a few nasty injuries from fighting his way through to the corner Crassus. Vicious did get a nasty head wound when he tried to take care of Spartacus on a horse and got himself slashed on the head for obvious reason. Spartacus clearly was the worst of the two of them, even them. However, Spartacus still proved himself, start out very even, and not even a Crassus signature movie of a bare-handed blade block. It is hard to believe that this series, which has made more than its fair share of struggle, both with the uncharmedly passing of original series, lead Annie Whitfield, and the sheer amount of people who wrote Spartacus off early unmistakably, believing it to be for purely puerile interests, actually made it as far as this program did. But as we approach the final episode of Spartacus' War of the Damned, the series easily illustrated how it managed to become one of the most consistently enjoyable, well written and yet tragically underrated programs on the television. And as the series progressed toward the end, which will certainly be thought of coming too soon, it was clear that even a story could have been decompressed and drawn in the smaller stroke. The road to victory had been given the considerable thought by Stephen as Deaconite and his team of writers, which is why even the final hour of Spartacus would have an enormous amount of heavy fighting to do. The opening sequences, which also serves as a nice homage to another Spartacus, perfectly illustrate the message of the series and the legacy of all these characters we have come to know and feel something for. Admittedly, in that opening moment, when Gannicus utters the phrase, I am Spartacus, it felt as though some tricky might be afoot. But rather than the play games regarding the immutability of their character, fate, the writer simply and effectively demonstrated how the name Spartacus had become something more important than a single man. The name Spartacus is something as powerful and legend with the meaning as a bringer of rain was to Batiatus before. It will become the synonymous with his dome. The name Spartacus had been transferred into a symbol and a movement that could be embodied by all those thirsting to be free. That notion is made clear one final term as Spartacus and Janicus have a quiet discussion wherein they discover how the radically divergent path and come to an end in pretty much the same place. Willing to die so that the other could live to carry on that this minute what the name Spartacus truly meant. The Thracian sums it by saying, life is but finite, not the death of Romans, nor over, nor those that follow us into the battle, but the life of Sibyl, or later, the mother and her child. They are all Sora, and I would see them live. That establishment of the series, intent and sharp delivery of the message allowed victory to gradually become an intense and breathless wave of action that gleefully toyed with the viewer, expectations without disrupting the purpose and meaning of the incapable climax from the onset. It was clear how outnumbered Spartacus was, how silly it seemed for him to take a stand against the might of Rome. And in this instance, we are reminded of how cases fell and still. Despite the insurmountable odds and the certainty of his fate, Spartacus puts on a brilliant showing, and for a brief moment, the viewer is invited to believe that history can, in this instance, anyway, be rewritten. Spartacus' cunning and relentless drive puts the Romans momentarily on their rail, especially when Gernicus arrived, dividing the army's attention and narrowly missing the Gracchus and Caesar with a barrage of Roman spear. But as soon as Luco, swinging a flaming hammer, outed, the momentum began to shift, and familiar characters are sent off to the afterlife, whether we know them from the first moment of the series, during courts of the arena, vegans, or even during war of the damned, as each character fall in battle. Their death land with a astonishingly impact, but victory does not settle for simple one and done. Confrontations instead, a delight with the moment like Spartacus knocking Crescens from his horse, then, after pursuing him atop a hill and slaying the several of his men, halting Crescens' signature technique and using it against him. It was like the battle itself, a losing endeavor, but one that was filled with some incredible and unforgettable moment. And while the battle was won for Rome, sort of like history, would remember it. The cost was great on both sides. Crassus would have his victory, but adding spans of total glory and wars, the life of the core. Meanwhile, Gernicus found in something worth living for and wound up crucified for it, but is greeted in the death by the omnibus and the roar of the arena. He was once a guardian. Victory and the series ends with the arrogant Nasir and the utter survivor, looking back on the man who had shown them to their freedom, leaving the Spartacus under a red serpent, as had been foretold when the series first began. Drawing that kind of circle back to the beginning of the series was an incredible, effectively way of ending Spartacus, and it helped demonstrate once more just how far series had come since its seemingly beginning. This is the kind of series one hopes it is not soon forgotten. Looking back on Spartacus as a whole, it seems impossible that it ever will be. Read only if you have already watched for the series final of Spartacus's War of the Term. Would he live or die? That was the questions heading into the series final of Spartacus tonight. While history tells us the titular hero and his rebel forces were defeated by the might of Rome, some historians have claimed Spartacus' body was never actually found, lending a glimmer of hope that the gladiators lived on rebellion later, played by the late Andy Whitfield and Andy Ballium, might actually make it out of the series alive. Those hopes were dashed when Spartacus, on the verge of killing Marcus Crassus, was spared by a soldier from behind. After being carried off by Agron, he died peacefully. As he continued, a former slave he worked to free and protect in it made it to reach safety. Other warriors like Janicus, who had strung upon a cross and left to be dead, were not so fortunate. We spoke with Spartacus' showrunner Snavanus Dick Knight about why Spartacus had to be dead, why he did, and whole other planned section to the final we did not see. Seventh night there was some minor debate, and I hear this from the fans non-stop. Hi, they never found his body. We would love to see him wander off into the sunset. My feeling is Spartacus incited this rebellion. Thousands and thousands of slaves got killed. It would be distinguished to have him walk off into the sunset. Plus just the simple fact that he has nothing to walk off to. His love for his wife, which brings us all the way until the final scene of the series. His love for his wife and that loss really keeps him from ever having a life beyond this. His life really ended with her, any chance of happy life, of a simple life. For him, I was either going to win or he was going to die. There is really no middle ground. Jake Knight, no, actually, I was pretty adamant that he had to fall. Story wise, it just did not ring true for me that he slipped away. I was also pretty adamant that somebody we cared about had to be get away and carry on the story of the Spartacus. But for me, with Spartacus, it always needed that powerful ending, which I think is probably a little more in keeping with the history. I did not believe that Spartacus got away. I think if he did, you would have heard from him again. He does not seem the type of guy to slip quietly into the dark night. Also, so I never really went on this path from the beginning of the series. My plan has always been that he either dies on the battlefield and is carried off or mortality, wounded and carried off. Jake Knight that want so many different versions. The first version was we would do a call back to where Crassus was fighting via gladiator in episode 1 and he uses the same trick on Spartacus. And in an earlier draft it actually worked and he ran Spartacus through. And we looked at it and some of us did not feel right about Crassus besting the Spartacus in a fight. Even it is very clear that Spartacus was seriously wounded before the fight started. So we went round and finally settled on. You know what would be cool? If Crassus does not the same trick and Spartacus stop him and almost kills him, which was much better. And then I also wanted to mirror a little bit of how Crassus dead. That basically these two giant dead by being stabbed in the back. Jake Knight that's another one that scene very difficult. I must have written 6 or 7 different versions of that scene. Early on, he did not see Onominus in his final moment. He just started his Spartacus name in defiance, and that worked okay. But it needed something, so I added in seeing Onimus because I thought that really wrapped up everything Janicus was always saying about seeing his brother again on the shores of the afterlife. And Onimus drank what seeing him and Malicha would greet Gannicus in the afterlife, so I added that part and it worked pretty well. And then really I think the master stroke came from our director Rick Jacobson, who really orchestrated that transition on the cross, the arena and the Janicus returning to the only true home he ever had. The only place he ever felt he belonged. Oh yeah, I remember finishing the first draft of the script that the first draft was actually about 15 pages longer than the final draft. There is an entire middle act of action that we cut out where Spartacus sets up this trap where they draw one of the legions of Crassus in and the legion thinks they are attacking the Spartacus ragtag village. But everyone has left and the place has been drenched in oil and set it on fire and basically burned the legion. And originally that's where Lugo dies. In the same way, but the script was way too long. We wanted to keep it on, but my feeling was it just kind of delayed what the episode was really about. So we had to ship that out and Lugo got to live a little while longer. But I remember handing in the draft of the script and my first thought was, well, we will never be able to shoot his. I mean, it's just way too big for TV schedule and the TV budget. We had a lot of talk. There was several different versions of that final battle, of it basically the same element, but we finally got it down to the point where it was only just impossible to shoot and Eric Jacobson, director. Just did a phenomenal job. I think it's the best work of his career. He really spearheaded it and somehow by Cook with a little bite of Crook. We got it all on the screen. I looked at it, quite frankly, and I am shocked at the scale we were able to be achieved. Considering the amount of time we have to shoot it, I think it's really unlike anything that's ever been seen on television. That night, that was Rob's idea, and I thought that was absolutely brilliant. He really wanted to give a note to everybody. who had a speaking part on Spartacus, and we also wanted to find a way to pay tribute to Endtime in those final moments. And I have always loved the end credit on this show, and I thought that was just the perfect way to go out. Jack Knight when it was sold to the store. It was very much sold as an R-rated action series, and as we started working on it, we started to layer in the bigger element of love and romance. We received an incredible amount of attitude from stars. We received an incredible amount of the attitude from stars, especially in that first season, where they let us to do pretty much whatever we wanted because they had this amazing trust in us. A lot of people out there who don't watch this, I think it's their soft care, really violent, trashy gladiator show. But we always were shooting for something more. We were always shooting for a deeper emotional story, and I am very proud of that story. We have told, and I could not be prouder of the final. Ending a series is always a monumental task, and many greater men that I have stumbled ending a series, but in this case, I just think it just all came together beautifully. Before there was Game of the Thrones on HBO, another premium subscription television channel was looking for a history-esque series filled with the blood and flesh. As the Starz network struggled to keep up with their competitor, our Thracian hero arrived to the battle and claimed victory. Spartacus, the show lasted for season as of one of the most popular premium network television shows in history. If you have not seen Spartacus for yourself, you can check it out on Netflix's Beyond. Once you have gotten a taste for Arena, there will be much being watching in your future. For now, let's take a look back at what ultimately proved to be a smashing success for stars and discuss some lesser known fact about the series you may not have known until now. We all know that when shows or movies add or based on actual events align, it rarely means we will be watching a true to life reenactment of event more often. The truth is stretching thin over the fiction. Don't get us wrong when we say Spartacus was based on the historical event and characters. We are not checking national geography levels of accuracy here, but just how closely they stick to what is known about the overarching story of Spartacus from the page of history may surprise you. Take the titular character Spartacus himself. The main history known was in fact, as the show portrays a Thracian gladiator who was enslaved and forced into the gladiator combat by the Roman. That man later escaped and was an instrument figure in the Third Survival War, a slave uprising that took place between the 73 and 71 BC. If you have watched the practices on stars, you may also recognizing a few other names of men who were leaders of that rebellion. The names Crixus, Anomius, and Gannicus should ring a few bells for fans of this show. Yet there were also actual people who actually took part in an actual slave revolt. Even the historical record of the Third Survival War contains some disagreement on the final detail of where some of these men came from the exactly what roles they played in history. So the show's writers had plenty of sleeping when creating their world and the character within it. But the blockbuster show again began with one foot planted solitaire in history and it began filling in the blank from there. While taking a few names overhead between the nap in app history, clause and turning them into a television series may not. On the surface, a sound like much attention was paid to the actual history of Spartacus and the Third Survival War. Those real life events affected the show on many levels, and we will get into it a bit more later. First, let's talk about what a big deal the show was for stars. Back in 2010, the Starz network was struggling to pull in viewers as other premium paid TV network, namely HBO, seemed to be pulling into the lion's share of viewer. Eyeball Stars was constantly in search of something to give them a boost to viewership and rating. And that's exactly what Spartacus did from the moment the show made its debut. With previous original series Crash only pulling in a reported 185,000 people when it made its Starz debut. Spartacus smashed through the existing record for the network, bringing in 661,000 viewers on Starz and another 580,000 on sister network Encore, and ended up bringing in a total of $3.3 million viewer once the weekend and ended. With a strong debut under its belt, the show continued to impress, growing a dedicated audiences that returned episode after episode, and Spartacus nearly single-handedly reinvigorated the network, continuing to increase viewer numbers and set Star's original series record, some of which would not be beaten until 2015. With its debut setting the viewership record of Starz, one might guess that the network knew it had a potential hit on its handle with Spartacus. That guess would be correct, seeing as how the show received another for a second season, even before a single episode had aired. They were willing to be stand behind Spartacus early on, perhaps adding a sense of safety viewer who would be more willing to get emotionally invested in a series they knew would be coming back for another season. The Starz network was not just guessing whether or not Spartacus would be hit with its viewer. However, they had a huge multi-faceted marketing the campaign in place intended to get viewer turning into a dirty, sweaty gladiator battling it out in the arena every week. As it turns out, Spartacus was a natural life fight for comic, especially seeing as how the series was shot in the an hour exposed video style. Reminiscent of 300, that film was an adaptation of a popular graphic novel. Audiences proved to be up respective to what Spartacus had to offer in comic form. Each entry in the Spartacus comic series highlighted the rivalries among the show gladiator, providing the some background and context as to how those were destined to die on screen, taking the successful Spartacus comic book series for Devil due to the next level. A four-part motion comic series was adapted from the pages of Sad Comic. All of the visceral part belonged well with fantastic voice acting in the series. And if you are a true fan of the Spartacus series, it is an absolute must-watch. Although some of the artwork does come across a bit awkward, given the way some of the panel were animated. Among the voice talent brought in to bring life to the comic where Kevin Wu's work also include credit in multiple Marvel and DC animated series, and Ray Park, better known to be Ned commentary as one and the only that mall. As the hype of the debut of Spartacus on Stars began to build, the comic and motion comic series paved the way for the world. Viewers were about to be engrossed in over the next several years. Of course, once the series proved her success, the Spartacus franchise continued to be separate to media other than just television and comic. Stars looked a new, immensely popular series to another level, with the introduction after a board game and video game. Tabletop game publisher Gale Forces 9 released Spartacus, a game of blood and treachery in 2012, with a limited release that year's Gone event, gaming the convention, and general release later that same year. Spartacus, a game of blood and treachery, maintains a very positive rating over on the board game geek to this day, and this is considered a favorite among many long-term tabletop enthusiasts. The video game released by the Ubisoft the next year does not quite live up to those standards. Released on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 in September of 2013, Spartacus Legend holds a partly 45 by 100 review score for the Xbox version, our own popular review. Aggregate Metacritic, while the PS3 version comes in only slightly ahead, with an average review score of 15 by 100. Even if the video game was not that great, Spartacus had become a success for Starz, which makes our next two entry even more tragic. With the second season already ordered, Spartacus made its debut on Starz in January of 2010 to an audiences that would continue to grow over time. As filming for the previously ordered season 2 drew near, lead director Andy Whitfield was diagnosed with a non-Hodgkin's. Whitefield began receiving the treatment in New Zealand season 2. Spartacus was postponed and the producers struggled to figure out what was next for the hit series. As a result of the Whitefield illness, producers chose to short a 6 episodes prequel miniseries, which ran during part of the second season runtime, and the original plan for season 2 were put on hold as the crew awaited Whitefield's expected recovery. The miniseries Gods of the Arena focused on House Batiatus before the arrival of Spartacus and how many of the characters present upon the arrival of Spartacus came to be in the Lancet. Sadly, Whitefield's victory over cancer would be short-lived. During a routine follow-up medical evaluation, it was discovered that non-Hodgkin's lymphoma had returned despite receiving a clean bill of health in June of 2010. By September of the same year, the cancer had returned, and Whitefield once again began undergoing treatment. Whitefield fought the disease that ravaged his body for another year, but sadly, on September 11, 2011, he passed away more 18 months after his. Andy and his wife watched the allowed camera to document their battle against cancer. And the documentary Be Here Now, the Andy Whitefield story, gives a raw look at the everyday fight against cancer and the impact it makes on a family. Aspect of the disease we often don't see. With Whitefield battling cancer for the second time within a few months of following the return of the disease, a decision had to be made about the future of the Spartacus series. Andy Whitefield decided to step down from his role as a lead character in the series, and Australian actor Liam. Despite being forced to move on without their original leading man, Spartacus continued for 2 more seasons following the prequel miniseries with a family interest as a titular character. The drama heightened as the slave revolt began in the season titled Spartacus Vengeance, coming to a conclusion to the end to the fourth and final season. Spartacus War of the Damned, but why would Starz being such a popular show to an end permanently? Viewer number remained strong and the series could have easily continued. To answer the questions of why so soon, we turn back to that historical accuracy we spoke of earlier. You see, at the end of the real Third Servile War history tells us that Spartacus more than likely dead, as he does at the end of a series. As we mentioned earlier, writers and the producer were obviously filling in the detail with drama and action created from their imagination. But the overall story was based on historical event. So when the show creator reached the point in the historical record where Spartacus dies in battle, they decided to bring their story to a close right there. The writers could have easily just added their own spin on things from this point, straying from the historical record for the sake of a few more seasons of television. But in the end, they decided to stay as true to the story they were recreating as they possibly could, and thus fulfilling the prophecy of the shield with a red serpent from the first season. With Spartacus officially off the air, fans will left to be mourn the loss of not only a beloved character, but also what in which they had become invested over the last several years. As you might imagine, there were plenty. In the entertainment website, The Wrap ran in a story on May 22 that year, which reported that its sci-fi network would be picking up Spartacus and airing new episodes going forward. The story quickly began making the round in the Spartacus fans community that their beloved show was coming back. Unfortunately, this was not to be the site had simply misunderstood the information they were given and corrected to the error Spartacus was leading to sci-fi for replays of the original 39 episodes only. No new episodes were being produced. Fans once again mourned the loss of the series, and it finally began to fade away into the history of spectacular television shows, with the overarching story fitting within the confines of known history. A couple of pretty important details of the story were definitely given about a Hollywood twist. For starters, there is not really much historical evidence to support that the end goal of the Third Survival War. The second detail which the series wrapped up nice and neat, but does not quite smash with what we know, was the death of Spartacus himself, while scholars of the time seem to be agreed that Spartacus did in fact die during a battle with the Roman legion. It's also said that his body was never actually recovered. His forces were routed during the battle in which he likely died. However, so undefined bodies covered the battlefield, and thousands more survivors were captured and crucified along the road between Rome and Coppa. So while it's doubtful Spartacus went on to lead a full life following the final defeat of his forces, he certainly was not placed in a nicely marked grave for all to admire. If you have not seen Spartacus for yourself, you can check it out on Netflix. We want once you have gotten a taste for his arena, there will be much binge watching in your future. For now, let's take a look back at what ultimately proved to be a smashing success for Starz and discuss some lesser known fact about the series you may not have known until now. We all know that what when shows or movies at all based on the actual event line, it rarely means we will be watching R2